Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is Ilya Ponomarev. He is a former Russian lawmaker who has been living in Ukraine since 2016. He was the only member of the Russian Duma to vote against the annexation of Crimea back in 2014. And since the beginning of the war in Ukraine on February the 24th, he has joined the Territorial Defense Forces. He joins us from Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Ponomarev, I want to begin with the gruesome discovery that took place in towns and villages near Kiev, especially Bucha, but it also seems to be the case in Borodyanka. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion here in the West and beyond, but do you fear that the worst might still be ahead when it comes to those discoveries?
I cannot compare one to another, but I think that those discoveries will definitely be not the last, because the whole logic of this war, Russian forces, they are facing the situation when every single house, every single person, all Ukrainians, they resist, and many of them resist with their arms. So obviously they are in the situation of totally besieged, frightened, scared people who are retaliating on the civilians. And we will see more, unfortunately. I am 100% sure of this.
Right. From what you're saying, do you think that it's more random crimes due to panic, fear, or, as the Ukrainian authorities have said, or the US and Europe have said, this is a deliberate policy and those are war crimes?
These are war crimes. These are atrocities which have no excuse, that's for sure. The question is that some people suggest that they were foreplanned. No, I don't believe that they were foreplanned. I think that what was foreplanned was creation of certain hunt lists, and I am on the main one. I know because being vocal and visible here in Ukraine, I think that they wanted to oppress militarily with brute force people of nationalist beliefs, Ukrainian patriots, because they wanted to scare the general population. They wanted to make them loyal by doing so, but right now they're just fighting with every single person because they face the omnipotent resistance from everyone.
Right. I mean, the fact that so many of those apparent crimes are left there for everyone to see. Obviously, Moscow said that this is fake news, that this is staged by the West and by Ukraine. But for you, is it an illustration of maybe the panic? Because one could have imagined that if it was carefully planned, all those evidences would have been erased or hidden.
No, you're absolutely right. It is panic because they were running away. Moscow suggests that it was a foreplanned and organized retreat, that it was a gesture of their goodwill, if you want. That they just said, okay, we made everything that we wanted, we accomplished our mission, and we just go away. But that was not the case. I was witnessing it with my own eyes. It was a retreat. It was panic. It was running away from Ukrainian forces. So they just didn't have enough time to cover the traces. And I think that actually one of the reasons of what we see on the streets of Bucha and other places is that they captured certain people whom they thought were the resistance fighters. And they didn't have enough time, so they just executed all of them when retreating.
Right. What is Vladimir Putin's intent now? Clearly, if he wanted to seize Kiev, he has failed. And in a way, he's acknowledged that. There's a lot of concern that the Russian troops will now focus on the Donbass, on the south of the country. Is de facto partition of Ukraine Vladimir Putin's new goal now?
I think you may be right. Obviously, we don't know it for sure, but there is this old concept of so-called Novorossiya, like New Russia. That's an old term for the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine, which consists of arc between Kharkiv and Odessa, including and include Donbass, obviously. I think they would try to create this arc and claim that that was their objective from the day one. So I think that what we see in the near future is we would see more attacks on Kharkiv. We would most likely see attacks on Dnipro. We most likely would see attempts to capture Mykolaiv and Odessa. But I don't think that that's theoretically feasible for Russian military.
Don't you think that Vladimir Putin will want some kind of victory, especially there's a date coming up next month, May 9th, the end of World War II, and that he could do it at all costs and even at a cost worse than the one paid by those people in Bucha and Borodianka?
I think he will try to claim something by May 9th. I think that's an immediate objective, and I think that's the promise that has been delivered to Vladimir Putin by his generals. But frankly speaking, you know, judging on how the first month of war went, I don't see whether he can do something about it. Now, a lot of Ukrainian military would be unfrozen from Kyiv, and they can join fighters in eastern Ukraine. So just simply Russian military is not enough, and they show that they are incompetent to achieve their military objectives.
So Putin lost the war.
Putin definitely lost the war, and he would be gone soon.
Well, let's turn now to Russia. According to the most recent polls, the war, or as it's called in Russia, the special military operation in Russia, has made Vladimir Putin extremely popular at home. And the protests that we saw a little bit in the beginning in Russia against the war have essentially vanished. So how could you say that he will be gone soon if he's supported that much at home?
Well, firstly, I don't think that your statement about Vladimir Putin's popularity is accurate. If we look at the polls, we see that it's, and that's even speaking about the official polls, that the support for so-called special operation is at 80%. Then support for Vladimir Putin is at 44-45%. But when people are asked not his attitude towards Vladimir Putin, but in general, how they see different Russian politicians, Vladimir Putin is being named by 25-26%. So, and I think that that's actually his real approval rate, not this 80%. And speaking about 80%, it's just dangerous to say otherwise. When people are talking to pollsters, they know that pollsters have their phone number, they know where they live, so they reply how they've been told to reply by the state television. You know, they're living in an authoritarian, autocratic state.
Right. You said that you believe Putin's day in powers are counted. How do you see the scenario unfolding? Because obviously, from what we see, he seems to be holding the reins very firmly until now.
You know, I don't have a crystal ball. And when I am saying so, I am saying because there is historical logic. No dictator who has lost the war can stay in power. That's simply impossible. So he would be replaced. It can be happening via several different methods. One, obviously, it's a popular rebellion. And I think that the demand for it is growing, and the more economic problems would be imposed on ordinary Russians, the more there would be a demand for a political force that would lead the people to change the power in the country. Secondly, obviously, the elites are very much unhappy because they are suffering. It's them who are living in France, in southern France, on Côte d'Azur, right? So they are very much unhappy that their villas are being frozen, that their accounts are being seized, and they want to do something about it. But it's a question of political alternative. So we as Russian opposition, we need to create this alternative.
Right. Just very last question. There's a third possibility is that there would be some kind of coup within his inner circle, the security people that he has surrounded himself with. Obviously, people tend to think that they're very faithful to him, but there is always this possibility. Do you rule it out, or do you think that might be the end scenario for him?
No, when I was speaking about elites, I had in mind something like this coup. I just do not believe that this coup would be originated by so-called siloviki, by the security forces. I think that it would be very much inspired by oligarchs' money, but obviously it has to be implemented by people with guns who have access to his physical body.
Right, and this is what you're hoping for Russia?
That's one of stakes, No, I would rather prefer the revolution because I think that the system needs to be replaced. I'm afraid that if it would be a coup, that the system would be preserved. But I think that even if it would be preserved at the first time, it would not stay for long. When in Russia political process are unveiling, it's very hard to stop them.
Ilya Ponomarev, I want to thank you very much for being with us from Kiev in Ukraine, and thank you for watching this edition of The Interview here on France 24.